Thank you for joining to our Stop Assuming, Start Validating webinar today. I am Evrim Özsoy. I am the Regional Director of Netsmart Security, and we are gonna present with my colleague Korcan today. He is the pre-sales engineer, and he will be the key voice in our technical strategy.
Yeah, hello everyone. Nice to have you with us today. Welcome to the webinar.
So what we are going to cover today, we are going to share a little bit about the company, who Netsmart is, what we do. And then we will discuss with Korcan together the effectiveness gap the companies we see are facing. And Korcan will take the stage. After that, focus on the measurable validation approach, which is the continuous threat exposure platform, and show the demo of the platform. In case you may have, and hope you may have questions about the topic, please don't hesitate to send it through the chat. We would like to address it after the demo section. So let's start with the company introduction. Netsmart Security is a cybersecurity company with more than 25 years of cybersecurity experience. We have more than 40 consultants, technical consultants with high technical capabilities and knowledge, and also lots of certifications. We are providing our services around 20 cybersecurity tools. And we are conducting around 100 projects per year with 98% of customer satisfaction. We are also HSD Security Delta partner. And when you look at our solution portfolio, you can see I think the well-known brands as well. We are elite partner of Splunk too. Within these solutions, we provide consultancy, we provide architectural design, project planning, installation, and 7/24 technical support. And if required, we are also providing managed services as well. This also applies to the PICOS solution that we are gonna focus today. Why we would like to share with you the PICOS solution, the continuous threat exposure platform, is that we believe there's a significant shift in the cybersecurity conversations. The companies are not looking to additional cybersecurity tools to add on to their cybersecurity stack, but rather than that, they are trying to evaluate and see if the solution stack is working properly. Actually, working properly. So PICOS is from that angle is so vital. The conversations are moving away from the traditional defensive mindset and towards the culture of continuous validation.
Yeah, that's exactly true, Evrim. And from the engineering perspective, we see teams, massive security budgets and huge investments, and they're still getting caught off guard with new attacks. And today, we are not here to talk about any, abstract theories or, newly and, up and coming, emerging and improved technologies, but we are here to give you a real, attack perspective and show you how to move towards a measurable validation and security control validation environment, so that you will get real insights about your environment that will provide a clearer picture for your security posture, and get the actual risks that you're facing within your environment as well.
Great. So let's look at let's do the reality check. Let's start with the reality check and how breaches are actually happening right now. I was assuming, and I think most of us are assuming, that the attackers are using sophisticated attacks like zero-day exploits. But the data shows a different story. Most of the modern breaches, attackers didn't need a magic key. They used again and again people and credentials to walk right through the front door.
Yeah, and this is the sobering reality. In almost every major incident that we followed recently, the security stack was already there. It was present. The firewalls were on, EDRs were deployed, yet they still all failed. And this leads to the primary message that we have today. The security failures in the recent years have rarely been caused by a lack of tooling. It is caused by a lack of validation.
Yeah, precisely. So if you aren't mapping your defenses to the Mitre attack mindset and or testing realistic attack paths continuously, you are essentially operating on hope. This is why Gartner is highlighting CTEM, the continuous threat exposure management, in their recent hype cycles. It's about being proactive rather than reactive. So let's talk about the offensive effectiveness gap. Sorry. So we see a major disconnect. So the companies are very good at measuring the coverage, and we see also, especially in the region, is that they are also very focused on the compliance angle, especially with the arrival of DORA and now in NIS2. But this doesn't automatically adds and equals to the effectiveness.
Yep, and this is the core gap actually, and we see it most often in these two specific areas, the EDR tools and SIEM tools. If you look at this in a perception versus the reality terms, it looks something like this. Companies think that by having their EDR agents in green or active mode, they assume that they are protected. But the reality is there's a lot of misdetections because their tool isn't tuned to the latest techniques. And again, companies assume since with their SIEM tool, they're logging everything and nothing can slip by them and they're safe with this. And the reality is often that they don't have the relevant correlation. Therefore, critical alerts, buried under a mountain of noise and, cannot be surfaced really easily.
Yeah, that is the reason why we see a security control validation is not anymore nice to have. It's crucial, and it is a business necessity. So you cannot manage what you cannot measure, and you cannot trust what you haven't tested. So, Karjan, let's see how Picos finally close that gap.
Yeah, definitely. So just like we mentioned a few moments ago, the companies today, they have a lot of capital expenditures and operational expenditures in their technology stack. And this brings in a assumption-based economy in their systems. Because of that, they don't have any actual number-based and rational statistics about how their security stack is, actually working against these new threats. And this is where PICOS and security control validation, brings the difference. We come in, and we create these simulations that will be the actual objectives and threats that are running on the wild. We run them against your systems, against your security control tools, and we validate their effectiveness. And at the end of the day, once we find some threats slipping by or some particular objectives not being detected by them, we will go back and say that, hey, these processes or these techniques and objectives, they're not being caught by your systems. Here is how to mitigate them. We give out vendor specific mitigation recommendations to you so that we will complete the entire chain with these mitigation suggestions as well, and get your security posture high and up and ready. And with this new assessment of your security posture, you will gain the ability to rationalize any of your existing infrastructure and also use it to rationalize new investments, both in technology, training, personnel, and have a really solid base to mitigate your business risk in the future as well. And with that being said, I will now share my screen and jump into our demo environment and showcase the capabilities of Picos. Just give me a moment to share my screen here, and I hope it is visible by everyone right now. And the screen that you're seeing right now is the dashboard of Picos platform. And it consists of multiple modules, as you're seeing on the left side here, and it will give you a brief summary of the integrations that you have. Our lab environment has a lot of different toolings, so you'll see a lot of different integrations with security control tools here. But the real deal is on the left-hand side with our different modules that actually constructs and builds the continuous threat exposure management itself. And it will start with the exposure validation and the security control validation tools. This is the bedrock of what we are doing. This is the breach and attack simulations that will happening in the background. The second one is attack path validation. This is the automated red teaming tool, a separate module. It is more dedicated towards, getting the blast radius of if any particular attack was not being detected by your systems and now, lives free and sets out to do what it's supposed to do in your environment. We have a specific tool for SIEM rule hygiene. We have an attack surface validation tool that does asset discovery. And this is also one of the real core fundamental modules for the continuous threat exposure management. Since if we don't know the assets and how business critical are they, we can't do a really intelligent assumption of how critical they are to the business or get some priority on that particular asset as well. And we have a dedicated cloud security validation tool. It's a cloud security posture management tooling here for AWS, Azure, or GCP at the end. And with these introductions, I will jump straight into the security control validation to showcase our breach and attack simulation capabilities. And immediately, as you can see here, we will be confronted by two big numbers. The one on the left is the prevention scoring of our lab environment, and the one on the right is the detection scoring. And these are the direct results of the simulations that we ran and the objectives that those simulations carried on. How many of them were successfully blocked and how many of them were unsuccessful in the blocking sense and went through. And so this 43% is the direct result of our capabilities. And we can even hover over this particular section and see the average scores for the entirety of the Picos customer database. And the overall one is 63%. Our lab environment is counted as a bank in Italy. So the region, Southern Europe, is on average 58% this week. And the financial services in its general, it's 65%. So this gives us a really interesting ways to play with it. This can be a KPI for our security teams, or it can be just a benchmark to get our security posture up and ready for these particular averages that you're seeing here. And of course, we can get the security score over time with different time ranges you can see here. And this gives us an opportunity to see how our security posture is changing throughout this time limit. Are there any significant up and downs? Do we have the continuous improvement that we are seeking out? And we can act on it depending on what is happening on our environment. And in my belief, one of the most useful breakdowns in this dashboard is this attack module breakdown. The 43% that we saw above was the average of our entire security stacks results of the simulations. But in here, we will separate them, break them down into individual components. like network infiltration, web application firewalls, email infiltration, and we divide this into different phases of our attacks: the delivery, the exploitation, exfiltration, so on and so forth. And here we can see that our network infiltration is doing fairly good. It's higher than the average of Picos users. And web application and email infiltration side, they're doing really poorly. So it gives us a really easy understanding of where we are in different components of our ecosystem, and get our priorities in order. Maybe our priority should be focusing on web application and email infiltration side of things first, rather than, adding up new signatures in the IPS or something. And if I slide over to the right again, you can see that we can run simulations on Windows endpoints, Linux, macOS, Kubernetes endpoints, and in Azure Cloud and AWS cloud operations as well. And we can also do data exfiltration to test out your DLPs, and URL filtering to test out your email security gateways as well. So these are all the different modules that we can use. And so far we talked about attacks and scores depending on those results of those attacks. Where do these attacks are actually coming from? It's coming from the threat library of Picos, and this is what Picos does the best. We have more than 7,000 threats divided into 29,000 different individual actions. All of these attacks that you're seeing here, they're pretty up to date. This is the really bread and butter of what Picos red teaming does, getting these particular threats into their ecosystem. We can pick and choose individual ones here, jump over to any one of these sections up top and see, what kind of attacks that these modules contain. And we can dive into really deep with these particular threats. What does it do? What the objectives are for this attack? What different techniques does it use? And we can even jump into any one of these particular objectives and see where they're sitting in MITRE attack. Even we can see the payload that we're going to run in your simulated environment, the exact payload that's going to be run, and exact rewind process that we're going to follow up afterwards. And we can, like I said, we can pick and choose any one of these particular items, or we can jump into the threat template library. These are all pre-prepared templates that Picos provides. They can be dynamic or they can be static, meaning that if they're dynamic, any new threats coming up tomorrow or the day after, it will be added if it's relevant to this particular category of dividing things, like the sector profile for financial services here. And if they're static, they're just focused on the exact context of these particular action that we're gonna see here, for example, Nginx UI web attack campaign. And we can jump back and run ransomware coverage. We can focus on APT group threats, or we can focus on specific devices and covering up their vulnerabilities and gaps. So we can run different templates that are ready to go right now in a continuous manner, daily, weekly, bi-daily, whenever and whatever we want. And where do we actually run these threats? It's on our simulation agents. So Picos itself is a SaaS tool in its default version. It sits on AWS, and the attacker side can also be put on premises as well, but in its default, it's a SaaS tool. But the agents that it's going to run these simulations on, they have to be on your own environment, because what we test and validate is the security control tools that protect your environment in the first place. So we need something behind them to be protected and checked out. So what we ask for our customers is that they prepare a list of the most commonly used devices that they have employed in their systems. This is what we call a golden image. And let's assume that you are using Ubuntu servers in your server stack, We want a copy of that to be a representative for the entirety of the stack, implemented with the same policies in the EDR side, with the same integrations sitting behind the same security stack. Maybe you're handing out Mac OSs to your personnel. We want a Mac OS device in that case to be a representative for the entirety of the bunch. Same with the Windows devices like Windows 10s, 11s for endpoints, or maybe Windows servers if you're implementing them. How many different varieties of devices that you use in your system with different security tools, of course. We will want a copy, a golden image of that in this environment to be tested out against. And once we have that ready with our agent deployed on it, then we can select the relevant attacks and techniques that we see here, or the templates that is pre-prepared, and we can run the simulations on these particular agents. And once we do that, it will show in this simulations tab, you can see here, with all of its different scores and the integrations and the relevant results. We can jump into any one of them. We can see the previous runs of these simulations, and we can see the current one and how we are doing in these threats. Are they blocked, prevented? Are they logged and not logged? You know, each and every one of the categories can be expanded. And we can see the objectives of these particular campaigns, particular attacks. And we can even dive deeper into any one of them and see what was executed here and how successful was it? Was it blocked? Was it logged? You know, we can see each and every one of the details here. And of course, once we run these, we can go back and, you know, create some reports. They can be in PDF format or CSV format. We can create, you know, more executively suited reports that are brief or more detailed mitigation reports that have a lot of additional details within them. And with these simulations concluded, or, you know, start setting up with their continuously run manner, and get results in, we can then think about how to mitigate this within our ecosystem. We have a dedicated mitigation layer here. We can jump into either a prevention or the detection side of things. And let me quickly jump in to the mitigation prevention side. As you can see, these are all the different security control devices that we have within our demo environment. And, you know, we can pick and choose any one of them to see all the attacks that they faced and failed against, so that we can jump into any one of them with, of course, the score impacts relevant to them displayed over here as well, so that we can jump into any one of them you see here and get the mitigation suggestions really easily. Depending on which stack that we are using, we can just dive in, click on it, and get the signature ID up and ready to use in our 40 IPS for this instance. Of course, we will have the signature version that we need to be on, the antivirus blade version that we need to be on, and the product version as well. So we have all the relevant data that we need in order to mitigate this particular threat. The same thing also goes with the detection side as well. We can integrate ourselves with a lot of different detection tools, not limited to these ones. We have a huge integration capabilities that I will showcase in a brief second. But we can jump into any one of these already present integrations and start the mitigation on detection side immediately, like the suspicious Notepad++ updater from a few months ago. And this mitigation for detection is as easy as getting the rule query here copied over to your Azure portal for Microsoft Sentinel. Or if we have the necessary permissions in our integration, we can even deploy it from here with a single click of a button. And we can do this with CrowdStrike as well, with different vendors. They're all here, like IOA rule queries, like you see here, can be deployed over here or copied over, basically in its format. And we have a lot of different integrations ready to go and keep expanding at the background. And with that being said, the final touch of the security control validation is, everything that we do sits on top of MITRE ATT&CK. So we have a dedicated tab for this. As you can see, we have a lot of different techniques displayed over here. And we can see how we are doing in each and every one of them, dive in any deeper and see how we did, what was the action for this particular one. I can see it in great detail here. And if there are no particular action ever been run for a specific technique, I can just jump into that relevant section. And the Picos platform will suggest, we have 6 threads that are capable of running these techniques. So I can immediately go into those 6 threads, pick and choose, which one that I would like to or all of them potentially, and start simulations of these particular threads as well, so that I can cover that particular TTP at the background. So this is the actual, bedrock of continuous threat exposure management. After running and scheduling this security control validation simulations, we will have the opportunity to validate and know what is being blocked by our systems, what is being detected by our systems, and continuously improved upon these as we go. And with that ready to go and a continuous improvement process, then we can talk about attack path validation, which is our automated red teaming tool. And this is a separate module dedicated to this task. And this particular module aims that everything else that we talked about in the security control side has failed. We couldn't block the attack or the payload. We couldn't detect the activities that it tries to conduct within our ecosystem, and now it is sitting in our in a specific machine in our environment and tries to do its thing. And it will try to laterally move, do some various enumerations, and try to perhaps obtain domain admin credentials. And with this tool, we will see the blast radius of where it can go and what it can do within our ecosystem. And we can create a simulation here. We can create one with no agents required. It's just an executable that we can run in any of our systems. We can do it with a particular agent that we're going to deploy, and it can be a continuous manner as well. And we have an up and coming black box pen testing, which will be available pretty soon. And as you can see, once we jump into one, we will see different actions that are available for us. We can pick and choose any one of them and see the contents of what it does in this particular enumeration. And once we are ready and set on what we need to do and what we need to check on, we can go next and select our agent and so on and so forth. And once we've done that, of course, it will show itself in the simulation area, just like previously. And we can jump in and see great detail on what kind of actions were successful and how we moved through your systems and found out various exposures within your systems. The best way to showcase this is in this map, a tree of actions that we actually took within your systems. So we started here, our initial access point, and we copied our processes, cloned ourselves in different ways and different manners, and did a lot of different enumerations, as you can see here. Found out really different stuff with RDP users and local users as well. But the main crux of the matter, we did some privilege escalations, and we can also see the exact detail of what we did, the impact of it, and if there is any mitigation suggestions for how to fix it as well. And we did some privilege escalations. We did a compromise action, as you can see here, and it allowed us to, this code execution over SMB protocol, allowed us to laterally move to a different machine now. And we can see the details of that as well. And so on and so forth. And this particular simulation was able to capture the domain admin account. And I can see it in a really short, to the point tree here, like all of the actions that allow us to capture the domain admin privilege account, as you can see right here. With at the end of the day, this particular action, LSS process memory dumping, allowed us to capture the domain admin privileges. And here's our findings. Here is the mitigation suggestion that we have. And once we do that, even if we cannot do the objective itself and have some different exposures found out in the background, they will show themselves in this exposure tab, which is pretty vital to our actions. This memory dumping attack was the one that allowed us to capture the domain admin credentials. So we can jump into it. Outputs of what exactly was captured within this particular action, as you can see here. And most importantly, we can see the mitigation actions. There is, to the point, great details to how to mitigate this particular action. And we have this in most of the actions that you will see here, with all of the proof necessary and the mitigation actions that we need to do in order to fix this exposure. So we will have this ability to find out what is actually possible once something gets through our security control systems, and what is the blast radius of what they can achieve within our ecosystem. And with this, the second phase of what we are actually doing is also complete. We checked out what is actually being blocked and detected within our ecosystem. And now we know if we can't block it or detect it, what can be achieved within our systems as well. And this will get us into the exposure validation side of things. And which is a great tool that's really handy in order to get these exposures remediated as soon as possible and as smart as possible. We will have the opportunity to get vulnerability scan results from vendors like Rapid7, Nessus, or Qualys within Picos itself. We have integrations for these tools. And once we get these vulnerability scan results, we will have the statistics about what is actually being blocked thanks to our simulations, and what is the blast radius thanks to our automated red teaming, and thanks to asset discovery tool that we have, what business critical items that we have here, which vulnerabilities that are sitting on top of these critical assets. We have all the data necessary to conjure up a more smarter way to approach these exposures. As you can see, we have a lot of different remediation suggestions affecting 122 different assets with severity distributions, and the operating system fallout as well. And this can go up and down depending on our vulnerability scan results and the results from our simulations. And once we have this ready, we can jump into view all the exposures that we found within our systems. It will display all 516 exposures that we have here. But what you will see here in this column is a new scoring that is called Picos Exposure Score. This is an additional score, a smarter score, as we can call it, on top of CVSS scorings that we have in the vulnerability scan results. And how we get this particular score ready, we have some customization, of course, but we have different weights depending on these 4 factors. How business critical is the asset that this vulnerability was found on? What is the CVSS score initially? And what is the exploitability and the security control effectiveness that we found, of course, running our simulations on the background with security control validation? Of course, we can pick and choose and get these weights in a different scale, but this is how we, of course, get the final Picos exposure score ready. So in most cases, you will see that CVSS score is a potential of the exposure, and with Picos scoring, this will can go lower or higher. And we can filter these out in any way that we want. Maybe we want low CVSS scores connected into higher Picos exposure scores. And here you go. We have one exposure that filters out the exact specifications that we just entered. It's 5.3 CVSS score translated into 7.1 Picos exposure score. So let's dive into this particular one and see what it's made of. As you can see, what was the reason that we put it in 7.1. We can see it in all details. What is the exposure details that we see here? The affected assets that we found this vulnerability on, and how they are situated. We can just jump into those machines and see what they're made of in its details, thanks to our asset discovery. And we can also get the remediation suggestions for how to fix this as well in a really easy manner. And we can go back and see the CVSS for this vulnerability and security control effectiveness that we saw. And as you can see, there was none here because it's fully exploitable. And we can just jump into see what actions can be taken to remediate this particular vulnerability within our web application firewalls. So we have the opportunity to get the exact prioritization that we need depending on our assets, our structure, how we can block or detect something on the background, and how widely a particular objective or threat can travel through our systems. And we can get a clear understanding of the really one of the most the difficult things that we can do here is the prioritization, and we can get a clear understanding of how to prioritize these exposures based on these factors that we just mentioned. And at the end of the day, this is how the continuous threat exposure management actually helps businesses, companies to get their exposure management and vulnerability management handled in a smarter, a more intelligent, and more evidence-based approach, so that these 500 or how many more of these exposures there are in your system, because it can be in the tens of thousands category, can be handled in a smarter, more prioritized manner, because as we all know, there's a lot of exposures and a lot of alerts coming in from different angles, and this will give you the opportunity to manage them in a sense that is most customized to your environment's capabilities. In its essence, this is how the continuous threat exposure management works.
Thank you so much, Korcan. Korcan,
welcome.
even though we are focusing on the effectiveness angle today, what about the regulations? Does PICUS support to any regulations as well?
Yeah, of course, especially with DORA and NIS2 and other frameworks as well. There's a lot of emphasis on getting continuous evaluation of your ecosystem, and PICUS does exactly that. We can run simulations continuously and scheduled, and it goes a step higher than regular pen testing, because if tomorrow there's a new particular threat emerges, we will have that on our threat library, and you can test that against your systems and see how you're doing. Even if you can't block it, you will have the opportunity to detect it running through your systems, and prevent it from going through its objectives and accomplishing that. So with DORA and NIS2, there are dedicated chapters that are considering these continuous operations like these, so we can directly address them thanks to our simulations here.
Yeah. We are also coming to the end of our webinar. Please don't hesitate to ask any questions you may have, but also I would like to ask one other thing to you, Korcan.
Sure.
We see other tools for example, continuous pen testing or red teaming. Why do you think this is PICUS is providing something else?
Yeah, that's a really great question, by the way. It is, well, because of the continuous threat exposure approach that PICUS has. We are not just running simulations on the background, or we are not just doing automated red teaming or automated pen testing at the background. we are a dedicated tool that has all of these modules combined within a single platform, and we can give a intelligent intelligent report on what is happening and what is possible on your environment. What can be done thanks to our simulations. We can see if something can be blocked or detected. And we can see what can be done if we can't block it or detect it. And at the end of the day, if we can get the vulnerability results here as well, we can also give you a pinpoint ability to see which one of these vulnerabilities are the highest one that you need to prioritize first. And you can go by and picking them off one by one depending on how actually important that they are. So it's not just spray and pray operation. We prioritize and give you an actual rational and number-based opportunity to fix these gaps in your systems.
And these are exploitable for sure.
Yeah.
We focus on the ones that are exploitable. I think the majority, the most biggest difference is from the vulnerability scanner or any of automated pen testing is that with Picos you know what is really risky in your environment, and together with the mitigations you know how to fix it as well. Thanks
Exactly.
a lot. I am still hoping to receive some questions. I think we covered majority of the solution, but let's give 2 more minutes to see if there's any interesting question. It doesn't need to be interesting, so let's
Any
not put
question that you have.
any
Yeah.
question at all. Yes, exactly. Um, And if you feel interested, we are happy to have any other additional demos, meetings, workshops, POCs even is also applicable. I will just wait for 2 more minutes and then we will close the section.
Even if there is any, we will have the recording of the session. We will have our contact information, both me and Evrim, of course. If you have something in your mind, you can drop us an email and we will answer back. And like Evrim said, we are happy to go over this again and again and again. So it's no issue for us at all.
Yeah, I just have one more question. I received one. What is the if running the STV model creates any risk in the production environment?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned in the SCV itself, technically we do not run these simulations within the production machines themselves. We want golden imaged machines that will be representing those production machines. They have the same stuff within them, sitting behind the same security control tools with the same policies on them. So once we run these tools, run these simulations on these golden image machines, any action that is being taken will also be applicable to the production ones as well. And those payloads that we're gonna run and the objectives that we're gonna simulate, they don't, they can't go run wild in your own systems. They're in that agent simulated environment, and everything that they do on that golden image machine is gonna be rewinded immediately, and that machine will go back to its initial stage. So there's no risk in this.
Yeah, and also maybe it is good to add that with the licensing you can have unlimited golden image access as well. So you can run as much as you like in the golden images. And with the starting package, it is limited with 7 golden images, which is most of the case good enough. We see in the for the financial institutions, 7 is also uh, good
More than
enough.
plenty. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So that's also that could be good to add. So with that, let's say bye and hope we can see each other again. Maybe if you feel interested, please don't hesitate to reach out. And thank you, Korcan, for the presentation, for the demo.
Yeah. Thank you, Evrim. And thanks everyone who's attending. And if you have, like we said, any questions, you can send us an email and we'll jump on it. Thank you very much for listening to us.
Thank you.